Right guys, welcome back to the channel, welcome back to another video. In this one I'm just going to be showing you how to change the rear wheel bearings in your prime Attaquer rim brake clincher rear wheel. So let's go ahead, let's run through the steps. So we have the rear wheel. So the first thing we do is we need to remove the end cap, as you can see there on the left hand side. So what you need to do that with is a couple of 5mm hex head Allen keys. So what you need to do is just place one in the drive side in that end like that on the freehab side, and then get the other one, put it in that side. So what you want to do is hold this side and then undo the non-drive side. So it's anti-clockwise to undo this one. So you just hold this side, just undo it like that, as you can see. Just undo it, and the cap, I'll just turn it around so you can see it. And the cap is threaded on there, so you just carry on and unthread that. You can see it there. So there's the cap removed from the non-drive side to left hand side. So now we move on to getting the cap off at this end here. So to get the drive side cap off, what you need for that is a 10mm hex head Allen key and a 5mm. So what you want to do is get your 10 and put it in the non-drive side, so left hand side, stick that in there like that, and then turn it round. Then keep hold of this side, then get your 5mm and then undo the drive side. So this is anti-clockwise to undo it, so just hold on the 10 and undo the 5. Just crack that undone. You can wind that off, as you can see. So there's the end cap off of that side. Just put them separate to one another so you know which side they came off, and then you can just slide the freehab body off at the end like that. So you got the freehab body off, and then you've got your spacer in there as well, so put that safe. And you can see now you've got the axle there with the bearing one down in that side, and then you've got a cover over this side, so you just take that off like that, and there you've got the bearing just in there. So what we'll do is remove those out of the hub. So what we need to do is remove the left hand bearing. So what I've got here is a block of wood on a hard surface, and the block of wood, if you see, it's just got a hole in it like that. And the hole in it is so you can just rest it down, and the axle on the end there is just sticking down like that in the hole, so it's not interfering with anything. So you can rest it flat on the piece of wood like that. So you're using a block of wood so it doesn't damage the hub or anything like that. I'm just showing you it on the floor like this, so you can just do it at home. If you've got a decent substantial bench, you can put a block of wood on the bench and use that. So what we need to do is rest it flat on there, then with a soft blow hammer, rubber mallet, so you don't damage the axle in any way. Then we just tap that down, and the bearing will start coming out of the hub. You see there it is on the axle. So we can just slide that on through. There's the bearing like that, and the axle just comes out like that. So now we need to do what would be the freehab side. So to remove the freehab side in here, what you need to do, just using your block of wood again, is just rest that down on your block of wood, and then if you look down through the side you just removed, then you can see the bearing down in there. So to get that out, what you want is a socket with an extension. So this is a 12mm socket. So you rest that down inside there, and it'll rest on the inner race of the bearing down in the bottom like that. So you can just stand it down inside and then using your mallet again. Just rest that in there and then give it a few sharp taps like that. And if you wheel up, and there's your bearing from in there. So we have the bearing. So what you can do now is go ahead, just clean up the inside of your hub, thoroughly clean that out of any old grease and dirt that's in there, if there is any, and then you're ready to go ahead and reinstall a couple of new bearings in there. So before we install the new bearings, what I'm going to do is get some grease after you clean the hub out and put a coating where the bearing's going to sit in the hub. So if you do that on both sides, so just put a light smear just where the bearing's going to go before we install it. And then what we do is we do the free hub side first. So if you get your bearing, just put some grease over the outside of it, just thin coat, and then on the side that's going to be inside the hub, what you don't see, if you just put over the seal before you put it in, we'll just put some grease over that. That just helps keep the moisture out of the bearing. Just put some over there like that. And what you can do is just lower it in place like that, and then just make sure it's sitting in there square, it's not going in an angle or anything. You've got to put it in straight. Now the way I'm doing this is just to show you, I say that you don't need any special tools to do it with. Obviously if you've got presses the right size for the bearings, then you can go ahead and press the bearings in. I'm just showing you this so you don't need to buy any presses or anything, the correct size to put it in. You don't need any of that, you can just do it like I'm showing you here, but if you've got the presses then go ahead and use them. So next thing you need is to get yourself a 19mm socket, and that's exactly the same size as the outside of the bearing. Never hit where the seal is on the bearing because you'll damage the seal and in turn then the bearing won't spin properly. So never hit there. Always hit on the outside of the bearing. So, and also get yourself a couple of good quality bearings to put in. Never use any cheap ones because they just don't last 5 minutes. So get yourself some quality ones first before you put them in. If you want to know the bearing codes, sizes, there it is in the description of the video below. So you can check that out if you need to purchase a couple. So what you want to do is hold that on there like that so it's dead over the bearing itself. And then once you've got it in place, to start it off, make sure it's going in square, then you can just tap it in with a very small hammer. So you just tap it like that just to get it started, and then just carry on tapping it on round and it will start going into place. So I'll carry on, tap that round, and then I'll show you in a sec. So there we have the bearing installed on the free hub side. So what you need to do now is get your axle. Then before we slide that through, just put a bit of grease there where it sits on the bearing, just in there like that. And then while we can get at this end, the opposite side, we just put some around there as well for when we install the opposite side bearing. So what we do is obviously put that through, slide it on through like that all the way, just push the axle back through the bearing you just installed and seat that in place like that. So we're ready to go ahead and install the left hand bearing now. So as you can see, we've got an extra block of wood that's identical to the other one in height. So what you can do, because the axle is sticking down where the freer body would go, what you need to do is put the blocks of wood like that, so you can just rest it down like that, so as it doesn't damage anything. It's just resting on the blocks of wood, so you can put in the left hand bearing. So we just get that bearing again, just put on the inside that you don't see, just put some grease over the seal, and just put a bit of grease around the outside of the bearing before we put it in, and then just sit that over the axle like that, and just drop it in, and it almost goes in on its own. Doesn't take a lot to put it in at all. So for this side, what you want is a 18mm socket. So you just put that over like that again, and just hold that in place, and just lightly tap it like that. It doesn't take any hitting at all, it'll just go in like that. Once it starts to go in, you can see the socket just sits there on its own, because there's a lip and the socket will just stay on there like that, so you can carry on. And that's it, installed. So we have both bearings in there. Also you can just give it a quick spin, make sure it spins as it should like that. So now we've done that, we're ready to install the end caps and the freer body back on. So what we do is put some grease over the axle where the freer body is going to go, like that. You put some over there, and just put some over the face of the bearing down in the bottom there. This is the free hub side, just a thin coat. And then what you want to do before you refit your free hub is the spacer that goes on, it's just grease inside that before you slide it on. Slide it down to the bottom, and then with the freer body just put some grease round inside the end where the pulls are, just in there where that space is going to go, and then just right down through the middle, just grease that inside there as well. And then the pulls themselves on here, if you've cleaned all that up, you just put a little bit of grease over the pulls themselves, the four on the back there. So we grease them up, and then we can slide it on. I always recommend with these wheels, if you bought them a brand new set or anything like that, or you've got a set and you've never taken them apart before, make sure you take them apart take the freer body off and remove the old grease out of them that comes in them standard. They come with a really thick white grease in there on the free hub standard, and it's really thick and it's really sticky grease, and it just stops the free hub working correctly. So you'll notice if you take it out and clean all that really thick grease out, and then grease it with some normal bike grease on there, and make sure you grease the axle and everything, because it won't have any on it when it's new. It just makes maintenance easier at a later date. So once you've done that, then we can slide that on back on there again like that. Just turn it backwards like that a few times, speed it spin. And also on these, if you ride your bike only in the dry weather, you're not going to ride it in the wet conditions or anything like that where you've got a lot of moisture about, then what you can do, there's a seal, it can be stuck in the hub there, a rubber seal, or if you pull it off, or it can be stuck on the freer body, if you see it there. So if you take that seal off of there, like I say, it could be stuck in the hub, you might need a little screwdriver to flick it out. If you take that seal off, and you know you're only going to be riding in the dry, you take that off, sometimes it can make the free hub less draggy and spin a lot easier. So that's just a note. So I don't recommend taking it off if you're going to be riding it in the wet too much. If you're going to do that and you know it's going to be slightly wet, then what you want to do first before you put the freehub body on is just get some grease there and put around where that O-ring would have been, where that seal would have been. So put some grease around there before you put the freehub body on if you're not using that seal on it. So you might find a difference if you do that on yours. You just might find a difference the way the freehub's working. So that's just a little tip. We'll put that back on like that, and then what we want to do is with the 10mm is hold the left hand side, and then get your cap for this side to put back on. So start that on there like that, do that up, and get your 5mm, just carry on doing it up until it stops, and that's enough. Just give it a little tweak, that's all you need to do. And then we'll see, put this side back on. So you've got your cover like that, and there is a little washer in the middle there of this that comes off like that. So just be careful you don't lose that. It just sits in the middle like that, and this has got a little O-ring on the back of it there, if you see. So what you want to do before you put that on is just put a little bit of smear of grease over the face of the bearing like that, and then slot that on, just to help keep the moisture out of in there. So once we got that in place, you can go and get your end cap and thread that back on, size clockwise. Just do it up like that to start with, and then again with your 5mm in one side and your 5mm in the other side, you can just nip it up, just tighten that up like that, nip that up. Then you can go ahead obviously and refit your cassette, put the wheel back in the bike, but that's how you install new bearings into the hub. So I hope you found the video helpful. If you did, remember to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel for more cycle related content. Till next one, ride safe and I'll see you then.